Well, welcome back, election judges. I'm now going to walk you through the poll pad, which is our electronic roster. We used these in the 2018 elections in the city of Mankato, Lake Crystal, and Eagle Lake, and we're really excited to roll these out across the county to all of our live polling places for the August and November 2020 elections. The electronic roster is going to help us check in voters and also register voters on election day. One of the really awesome things about the poll pad is that it won't allow you to make a mistake. So as long as you follow the instructions on the screen, follow the cheat sheets that we provide, have an experienced judge help you out, you'll be able to use these poll pads no problem. I am going to go through the poll pad use in the course of this video, but I do know I'm not going to be able to spend as much time and go into as much detail as you're likely going to want. So I don't want you to feel overwhelmed. You can come in and use the poll pads whenever it's convenient for you if you need to practice some more, or sign up for that optional capstone course where we'll be able to have these on display, answer any questions, and help you get that familiarity that you need. But let's dive into it a little bit. When you arrive in the polling place, you're going to have multiple poll pad cases available to you. We assign a certain number based on the number of registered voters and how much activity we think we're going to have out there. You're also going to find a supply case. The supply case is going to contain all of the materials that you need for the poll pads that you'll be using on election day. When we open up the supply case, you're going to find in there a hotspot. And the hotspot is very important. That transfers data back to our central computers and keeps us up to date and current across all of the county so that voters only vote in one location and don't try to sneak into another precinct. You're also going to find cases inside the case. You're going to find cables to plug the poll pads in. You're going to find spindles to hold your receipts. Let's take one of those out. You're going to find a bunch of extra receipt tape. We'll explain what that's going to be used for as we continue to unpack this. And you're also going to find a surge protector. For purposes of today, I'm not going to pull the surge protector all the way out, but you're going to want to use that to make sure that the poll pads are always plugged in on election day. The only reason you'd unplug a poll pad on election day is if you're making it mobile to go help a voter somewhere in a little bit more private setting or at a curbside. You're also going to find a power block. This is what we're going to plug the poll pads into. And you're going to find lots of wipes to help you keep the screens clean. All of this will get used on election day. I'm going to leave it inside my case just so that I don't have too big of a mess. But again, follow the instructions. That'll help you get that all unpacked. The other thing that's really awesome about our poll pads is that we have everything assigned with color-coded dots. So as long as you're able to follow the instructions and match up color-coded dots, you'll be set to go. So let's actually get our hotspot set up. I want to spend a little bit more time talking about the hotspot. The hotspot, again, is what passes data along to the other computers and other poll pads in the polling place, as well as our central computer back at the county. We use two different poll pad hotspots, and they each are going to come with their own set of instructions. So depending on which one gets deployed to your polling place, follow the instructions for that one. The hotspots need to get set up very first thing in the morning, and the way that we set up the hotspot is we actually unpack it, we follow the instructions, but essentially the instructions tell you to screw on the antennas on the back. I'll get one of those on for you. You're going to put both of them on, and then you're going to plug it in. And when you plug it in, you'll plug the other side into the power strip, and we want to make sure we do that. Once we have it plugged in and the antenna's on, then we can actually power the device on. There's a power button on the front. Again, the instructions walk you through that. Once you have that set to go, you'll have a green indicator light that says that's working. We always make sure that that hotspot is up and running first thing on election morning. Once we have the hotspot set to go, we can now move over to our poll pad, and we'll check that to make sure that that's ready to work and get that all ready for election day. So let's dive into that a little bit more. The best way to work with the poll pad is to open the case and essentially unpack everything. The reason we do that is because we need to make sure that we're matching up components. In the poll pad case, you're going to find a poll pad, and that poll pad is going to be numbered. We want to make sure that the number on the poll pad, I have number 1, matches the number on the printer. The printer is number 1, and the reason for that is because those two are married. They communicate to each other on election day. What we're also going to unpack out of our poll pad case is the base, the arm for our base, the power pack for our poll pad. We have an ID case, and we have a stylus. The other thing that's really cool about our pull pad cases is that they have simple instructions that are right inside there. It literally is a couple of steps there of matching up color-coded dots, and we'll have everything set to go. We also have a screen cleaner to wipe down the screen, and then also we have those alcohol wipes to take care of anything that we might need to deal with there. So once we have the pull pad unpacked, we can start putting pieces together. The way that we put the pull pad together is we essentially line up those color-coded dots. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to take our arm, and you'll see that we have a pink dot, and we have a pink dot on the back of this. We plug those two pieces together, and you'll hear a little bit of a snap there. It snaps into place. Pink dot to pink dot. Now we have a green dot. The green dot lines up with our base, which has a green dot on there. We stick that in there, and now we have a pull pad on display, and it swivels. Let's move over to the printer for a second. The printer is red dotted, so we've got our power end, and that gets connected together. And then we have our power end, which again gets plugged into a power strip so that we can have power to the printer for election day usage. The other side is the most challenging of our connections. This has a small red dot on it, and that is actually going to get put on the back of the printer. So if you want to take a slightly closer look at this with me, we're going to show you how that lines up. This one does require a little extra push, and it's got a flat top on it, and we keep the flat top up, and we can actually get that shoved on and in there. Be careful when you're doing it, but then make sure you give it a good little push when you have it all lined up. So we've got that set up. And as I said, we're going to make sure that we have power to our pull pad. The power for the pull pad can run off of the surge protectors that are provided for you, and remember we want to keep that power engaged at all times. The other thing that we want to not forget to do is to plug in our pull pad to the surge protector as well, using our little power block that we talked about earlier. For purposes of display today, I'm going to keep one less wire on the table for me. I'm not going to have that there, but remember you always want to plug it in. We have two more things that we need to do. These are the last attachments that we're going to make. We have our barcode reader. This helps us read driver's licenses. So we're going to put that right on the back of the device here. There's just a little bit of a slide-in spot for it. And again, we have our color-coded dots. And then we have our stylus. Purple dot to purple dot, orange dot to orange dot to keep that stylus from walking away from you. So there you go. You've got the pull pad set up. We've got all of our dots lined up. We're going to keep power to the pull pad at all times. We've got our printer set up. We've plugged in our printer. We've made sure our printer's on. And we're going to do one last check to make sure we have all the devices in the right place. Printer number 1 lined up with pull pad number 1. Remember, those are tagged for us. We want to always keep those devices together. Well, we've got our pull pad all set up. I'm sure that seemed a little overwhelming to you all. I do that very quickly. I've put many of these together. Just know that we have step-by-step instructions and we have color-coded dots. It's really very easy to put them together. Another piece of advice to remember with the setup there is to have 1 or 2 election judges focus on that. Don't have a bunch of different election judges working on that. Pick 1 or 2 people who are very comfortable with technology, and they'll be able to have your devices set up in no time flat on election day. So now we're ready. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. We're ready to open our polls, and we're going to make sure that our pull pads are turned on. And you might have to fully power it on. It might come to you partly loaded. And then what we're going to do is we're going to actually open it. The first step is to push the home button on the device. And then that is going to bring us to the pull pad application, and then we can push the application button to load up the pull pad. So when we load up the pull pad, you'll see that we have a general home screen. And on this general home screen, we're going to make sure that the right election is labeled. That'll be the election August 11th or November 3rd, depending on which one you're working. It's also going to list the polling place that you're working in. I'm in a test election environment here called the Mall of America. We're also going to see that we have no voters checked in, and we're going to see how many voters we have in the polling place assigned to us. We're going to also look at a couple of other things on this screen. We're going to see a green indicator up here by our printer. That tells us that we're connected to the printer and everything is ready to roll. If you wouldn't have turned on the printer, if you had the wrong printer in place, it would be giving you a red indicator there. You'll also see that green cloud. The green cloud indicates that your hotspot is working and that the devices are communicating. If that's not green, that means we have a problem. Likely the router hasn't been turned on, it's not plugged in, or it needs to be moved because it doesn't have good reception. The last little indicator over there is two little people. Those little people will be green on election day because that means your devices are communicating to each other. And then there's going to be a number there telling us how many devices you're communicating with. So if I had green people with the number 4, that would mean that there's 4 other devices in the polling place that are communicating with this device. That's a really important feature for us to have because what that does is it prevents somebody from checking in on one poll pad and coming back later in the afternoon and checking in on another poll pad. Okay, so let's check in our first voter, and this is what you're going to do for the majority of your election day. Most of our voters are pre-registered, their information is all correct, and they essentially just need to be found in the electronic roster and processed through so they can receive a ballot receipt and actually vote. And so the way that we do this process is we're going to be on our home screen of the poll pad and we push the Get Started button. Here, this brings you up to our name search. The name search is the most common way to find voters. The voter is usually going to introduce himself or herself, and we're going to search for their name. We search for the last name first, and then the first name, and you can search with just 3 characters of those names. So WAS for Washington and GEO for George is what we're going to look for our first voter. Remember to use the 3 characters, that's the easiest way to find them. We hit the search button and you can see the record there for George Washington. We select his record, we confirm his information including his address, his name, and his date of birth, and we want to make sure that all of that information is correct. The date of birth is there for you to make sure that you're not checking in a senior-junior situation. If we have all that information correct and everything is ready to go, we can actually accept and finalize this voter's check-in. And so what we do with that is we actually push the button for accept, and you'll see that's the one last chance for the election judge to back up if we need to. Otherwise, we've pushed that final button there to confirm it, and we get 2 receipts. The first receipt is the voter certificate. This is the oath that the voter reads and signs saying that they're eligible to vote. That is kept with the election judges. It goes on the spindle or however you choose to keep it in the polling place. You'll keep all of the voters that you've checked in on that same spindle. And then the other receipt goes to the voter. That is their ballot receipt. It's listed there as the voter receipt for you, and you'll actually make sure that the voter takes that to the ballot judge to get his or her ballot. We can now go ahead and move on and do that demonstration one more time just to show you how another voter is going to get checked in. And this time we're going to look for Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, so J-A-C for the last name and then A-N-D for Andrew for the first name. We hit the search button. And once we find Andrew's record, we're going to be able to pull that up. You'll notice that sometimes you'll have more than just one name listed there. You would select whichever one's the correct one. We confirm the information for Andrew Jackson, including all the way down to his apartment number. Remember, that number has to be correct. If it's not correct, we need to re-register or update that voter's registration. But assuming everything's correct, we hit accept. We confirm that information on our screen, and then we get our voter receipt and our ballot receipt again. Remember what we do with our 2 receipts is we have the voter sign after reading the oath. That one goes on your spindle. And then we give them their voter receipt, or what's called the ballot receipt. That gets them their ballot on election day, and they can continue through the voting process. Alright, so next up for us is to go into some of the advanced functions that are available, and this is going to take us into the advanced search. But what we always do is we start out with the simple search and we look for the voter based on first name and last name and see if we can find the record. If we can't find the record for the voter, then what we need to do is actually go into our advanced search functionality to locate them. That's why we always use the first 3 of the last name, first 3 of the first name to help us get there. But if we need to get into the advanced search, we can sure do that. And on the advanced search, the first thing you want to do is make sure you've hit the reset button to clear out your screens. Once you've cleared out the screens, you can see that you have some options available to you. Date of birth, driver's license number, address, multiple functions there. Date of birth is a good one to use. Date of birth will allow you to find any voter who has that date of birth. So in this instance, I'm putting in May 27th, 1976 because that's what the date of birth is for the voter we're looking at. We'll see that we have one voter's record after we've hit that search button. And there we have our voter. So this situation might be where you're having a communications issue with somebody where you can't quite understand the last name that they're saying or spelling. That date of birth might allow you to find them. Once you find the record, you can check them in, do the accept screen, and you can submit that and print out the receipt. Again, we get our voter signature certificate, and then we get our ballot receipt or our voter receipt to give to our voter to get a ballot. That takes us through that advanced search screen functionality for a date of birth. Like I said, you have the other pieces there to do like an address or a driver's license. Any of those functions will be available to you. And then I will show you how to use the scan barcode function in a little bit as well. But let's go back. And so the best way to go back is to do that get started, start over. That clears out everything and allows us to work through the process a little bit more quickly, knowing that all of the previous information for previous voters has been cleared out. Our next individual is going to be an actual opportunity for us to update a voter's address. And so you might need to do this if somebody says, hey, I know I'm registered here, but I moved to a different apartment, or I've moved to a different house, but I'm still in the same precinct. And this is like a voter registration. It's very similar to that, but there's a shorter process to it, so I want to show you that. So we always start out by searching for the voter just to make sure it hasn't been updated. Here we're looking for Zachary Taylor. So I use the 3 characters for his name. I find his record, and I see that it lists him as 1046 Sandcastle Road. He tells me that no, he's moved. He now lives on a different street, and so we're going to need to update his voter record based on that. What's really cool is we have this button on the bottom of the screen. It's called Register, and that is going to allow you to take that voter's information and bring it forward to a new registration so you don't have to re-enter everything. Now where we get into the functionality of the poll pad is that it will walk you through every step for voter registration, and as long as you follow the screen prompts, ask the questions, and answer them all, you'll know that you're registering the voter correctly. That's a really cool functionality of it, and once our judges get comfortable with it, they feel good about registering voters. We answer the first 2 questions on the screen. These are required for every voter. Are you a U.S. citizen? Are you 18 years of age? And you'll notice that those do allow you to select whichever option, but the poll pad won't let you make a mistake. So if you answered it wrong like I did there, it pops up as red. When we get it right, we can get our green next button and continue. You'll see that my information for Zachary Taylor has been brought forward. That's because we updated his registration rather than starting a new one. And you'll see that that's all correct and carried forward because that hasn't changed for him. We can hit the green next because all the required fields are filled in, and now we get to the address field. Here's another really cool functionality for us. We select the field to update it, and we start typing in his new address, 407. He moved to 407 Airport Way, and here's where you need to be patient. If you start spelling Airport Way and you do it nice and slow, you'll see that it gives you suggestions for addresses that are in your precinct. You always want to use that functionality so that you find the exact right address, and once you find it in your drop-down list by typing slowly, you'll be able to select it, and it auto-fills out the rest of the form for you, saving you a ton of time, but also making life so much easier so that you know you have a voter at an address in your precinct. You'll also see that that green next button came up because everything is now filled out there. I want to point out one other little feature on this screen. You'll see that it is listed there in that kind of middle of the way down the form, and that is where we're talking about updating a address to something that would have a mailing address as opposed to just a residential address. That defaults on is saying that it's a yes, meaning it's not required. I know that's kind of a silly way to say it, but it defaults to the role that we want it to stay because most of our voters receive mail at their house. If you have a voter who says they don't receive mail at their house, you're going to want to get your head judge involved because in the city of Mankato that's almost never going to be the case. Some of our smaller cities or townships, they might get mail at a P.O. box and then you would switch it, but for us we want to always get a head judge involved. So I'm going to move on, hit next. I get a prompt screen here saying do I need to add an apartment number? If you need to add an apartment number you can do so on that screen. That's just a reminder for you. And now we get into the registration part of our screen. What we're going to do here is walk through the face and place concepts that we talked about. And remember the poll pad is going to walk you through all of these steps. So just pay attention to the screens, look at all of your options and make sure you're following the directions and you'll know you'll get it right. This first one is saying what sort of identification are we using for this voter? I get my 3 options that are allowed for proving identity for a voter, for proving their faces, and we're going to select that the voter has a social security number. When I select that option, it says, okay, great, what's the social security's last 4 digits? We enter those last 4 digits, 1, 2, 3, 4 is what I'm using here, and you'll see my green next button popped up. Because remember, it won't let me proceed until I've filled out the information correctly. This next screen now asks me for the residency. How are we proving the place? Again, I get all of the options that are available to me. In this instance, I'm going to be using that photo ID that the voters provided me, but with a different document that has his current name and address on it. So we fill that in, and now the poll pad says, well, we've got to finish the rest of the form. What is the type of ID? You'll see all of the options that are available, so you want to look at those. Any of those are acceptable. Let's say the voter brings you a US passport, so great, we'll put that in there. Now it says, what's the passport number? Passport numbers are on the passport. You'll start filling that in. I'm just putting in random numbers here. And then it says, well, now what is his residence proof? How is he proving his actual residence? And in this statement, in this section, you'll see that the list is quite lengthy. Those are all allowable in Minnesota, so you can use any of those as your cheat sheet to know what's acceptable. Find the one that works for you. In this instance, we're using rent statement. Find the one that applies to that voter. And you'll see now that I have my green next button because I filled out the form correctly. Here I get a confirmation screen. It gives me as an election judge a last chance to go backwards and correct something if I miskeyed something or have some bad information in there. So we review this screen as an election judge. If we like what we see on that screen and we verified all of the information, we can hit the next button. Here is where the election judge is going to actually initial, saying that they have completed the election day registration. You initial right on the screen with your finger or your stylus. Either of these options will work for you. If you use the stylus, that's fine. Just remember to keep that sanitary, and then we hit our next button. We do confirm that voter, and we will actually get our voter application to print out. The voter application looks different than the voter's oath because it actually needs to mimic the old paper voter registration applications that we had. You'll see that all of the information that you just inputted for that voter is on that top section. And then we have the voter's oath, and then the voter is going to sign there. That also goes on your spindle. You're going to want to fold it in half, and then make sure that you're keeping the private data section face down. And the reason you want to keep that face down is because there is some private data on there, and so just in case somebody would be looking in the polling place, we want to make sure that they aren't going to be able to see that. Okay, but otherwise it goes on the same spindle. So now we've updated the voter registration. We need to check that voter in. It's going to be checked in at that new address. You'll see that's on there. We hit our accept button, we hit our submit button, and we actually get now the voter's certificate to sign. They sign twice as a registered voter, so make sure they sign that one. Goes on your spindle, and then you've got your ballot or voter receipt that allows them to go and receive their ballot to cast their ballot on election day, just like our other voters. So pretty straightforward there. That updated registration is a really awesome feature because it allows you to bring that voter forward without having to re-enter all of the information. So really awesome. What I'm going to show you next here is actually how we use the barcode reader to register a brand new voter. So really cool functionality. We start out, we never ask for that driver's license, but we can have it available, and if the voter provides it, or if you ask the question saying, hey, I can use that to help register, but it's not required, that's totally fine. But we're going to work with that. Remember, we always search for the voter first just to make sure the record isn't updated. So here I'm looking for Alexander Hamilton, H-A-M. A-L-E for the first name, 3 characters. Remember, we hit search, no voter found. Very good. What we'd encourage you to do is do an advanced search just to make sure that we don't have him with a misspelled name. Look under his date of birth, under advanced function, something like that. But to save time, I'm going to say let's just click the registration button, and that's going to bring us to our registration prompt screens, just like we were just doing. Remember, we have to answer the questions correctly to be able to advance. And now here on this next screen is where we have the ability to scan the driver's license. So pause here. If the voter has that available, wants to make it available, remember it's not required, we're going to use that information to actually bring in a fair amount of the voter's record. We use the barcode on the back, and the barcode on the back sits on that little ID tray that you added when you set up the polling pad. Barcode faces the back of the poll pad because it needs to capture with the camera, and we hit the scan barcode button. You'll see that it grabs the image, takes a picture, and then starts bringing in the information. It says this is Alexander Hamilton and pulls his date of birth. You could update that information if you needed to. However, I don't think you have anything that needs to be updated on that screen, so we hit next. Now we get to the address field. If that driver's license has the current address in the precinct, it will pre-populate that information for you. Sometimes you might have to enter it yourself though if there's a little bit of a quirk, so you just enter it like normal. Remember, starting with the house number, then clicking into the street number field. Remember typing slowly here so that we can use the drop-down suggestions. He lives on Center Street, so we're going to start with CEN. We see that it pops up. Awesome. It fills in the rest of our form, and we get our green Next button. Asks us if we have an apartment. In this case, we don't have an apartment, and now we get into the face and place pieces of the registration. How are we proving his residency? We look at our drop-down options. In this instance, he is going to be proving his residency with a Minnesota issued driver's license, and you'll see that that is actually going to pre-populate for you because we scan the driver's license. And then we're going to say how are we going to prove the actual current address part of the residency, and we're going to use that same driver's license. And we're going to select those fields, and again we get our driver's license number to pop forward. Because we have all the required fields on there, we get our green Next button, so then we move forward to it. This Next button, because it's a new registration, says how, is there any voter registration to update? We have nothing, so we move forward past that, and now we're up to our confirmation screen, our election judge initial screen, and we finally get our final submission screen, which will register that voter. You'll see that his registration is now on your poll pad screen, and you get your voter registration application to print out. Remember, the voter signs on the bottom of that. We make sure that we fold it in half, face down, and put it on the spindle. We then check in Alexander Hamilton to make sure that he can actually sign his voter's oath and receive his ballot receipt or voter receipt in order to vote. Alright, so next up I'm going to actually take you through some of the other statuses that you might see on the poll pad. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this, but I just want to remind everyone that you've now checked in a voter, you've updated a registration, and you've registered a new voter. You're going to spend 99% of your time just checking in existing voters, and so that's a very quick, easy process on the poll pad, as you saw. And then you are going to register and update some voter registrations, and so those screens are a little bit more in-depth, but as long as you follow the instructions on the poll pad, you'll walk through them just fine. So, like I said, I want to make sure you're comfortable knowing that most of your work is going to be super routine in terms of look for the voter, check them in, have them sign, give them a receipt, and that's pretty straightforward and easy to do. The other steps are easy on the poll pad as long as you follow the instructions. But I just wanted to show them to you. So let's move into that next functionality. What I want to do is show you what a voter status might look like on there. So I'm looking for John Adams in this instance. When I see John Adams's record, you'll see that it is pulls up because he's in my precinct, but he has a status associated called absentee voter. That means he's already voted in this election, and you'll see that this screen gives you information about that, but it won't allow you to actually move forward with the election process. All it does is allow you to go back and redo a search for somebody else. The reason that's important to see that is so that you know that that voter's already voted. Start over, get started, clears out our screen, and this time I'm going to look for Abraham Lincoln. L-I-N for the last name, A-B for Abe, and we'll see that he has a record. This voter's record says that he is unverifiable. He's been challenged. The challenge screens tell you exactly what to do, so be sure to pay attention to that, and you'll actually work through the questions and the prompts on the screen to make sure that you're handling the situation correctly. So it says, ask the voter, do you solemnly swear to be honest in your answers? Now we say that the voter has an unverifiable status, and we ask the voter, what is your full name? What is your full and current residential address? And then we can see what options we have available for us after we ask those questions. The voter has the ability on this through the challenge process to either accept it, give you the right answers, and if that's the case, you can accept them and submit them and process them through just like any other voter. And that allows you to work through that process just like you normally would. But remember to follow the screens for the challenges, as that allows you to actually work through that and handle the process. I'm going to now search for my next voter, James Monroe. James Monroe is also challenged. You'll see he's challenged for a felony. The same prompt questions are there, but you'll see that you can reject that if the voter chooses not to participate in it, or if he fails it. When a voter that is challenged fails or refuses to do it, once you've noted that status, you can't process that record any further, and you'll see the poll pad stops you from doing that as well. Alrighty, and so with that functionality, what I want to do is give you one more look at the Precinct Finder. The Precinct Finder is under that menu button in the upper left corner. When you go into Precinct Finder, you're going to put in a voter's address. What you can do with this is to help direct a voter to a new location. So I'm looking for an address here. And when I start typing in the address, remember to use the drop-down fields and the suggestions that are provided, just like we've been doing all along. So I'm looking for Aquas Court. Once I find that, I can say search. Once I've selected that, it tells me where to send that voter. It gives me driving directions, and I can either print that or text that to the voter if they want to receive it on their phone. Again, that's the Precinct Finder that was under the menu functionality. We select Precinct Finder, and there we have it. You'll use that throughout Election Day to make sure that you've got all the information that you need for your voters, and you can get them directed to the right locations. I'm going to go back now and get back to my home screen. This is where we would live to be checking in voters and keeping all of our information current and up to date as we're working on Election Day. So those are really the poll pad functionalities in a nutshell. Like I said, I moved through this very quickly. I hope you'll come into the office and visit us if you want to practice it or sign up for the optional poll pad training course. That's available to you, and we want you to use that if that's something that would be helpful for you. What I'm going to do now is switch over to our step-by-step instructions to tear down the poll pad. We're going to follow the instructions that are provided in the poll pad case, but remember we want to keep at least one poll pad fully operational until at least 8 o'clock at night. You might want to start packing up a couple of the poll pads prior to that, but keep that one active so that you can check in voters up until the very end. Also, we want to make sure that we're keeping the poll pad connected for at least 5 minutes after you've used it last. That allows that data to come back to the office and make sure that we bring that information back in for any of the last minute check-ins that you might do. You could start packing up the other peripheral pieces there, but we want to make sure that that poll pad is staying on and connected so that it can sync back to the county's offices. But when we start looking at packing up the poll pad, what we're going to do is we're going to start with the printer, but I should really show you a suggestion here. If you start running low on paper on the printer, you're going to open it up here off to the side here. There's a little latch, and that'll get you the roll. This roll is quite full. Most of your rolls, poll pad printers will come with full rolls, but in case it's not, you'll get a new roll out of your supply kit, and you're going to essentially just drop it in there, but have the paper pull up from underneath. It just sets in the little cradle, but just pull enough of a tail, remember, from underneath, snap it back in place, and that's how you would replace the paper in the printer. So yeah, just wanted to pause real quick there and make sure that you're understanding how to do that. Pretty straightforward, but for some new judges, that'll throw them for a little bit of a loop. So let's start packing up the device. After 8 o'clock, we can take the poll pad off of its stand. We can unclip our stylus, pull off this ID reader, and then power down the poll pad. Remember, that's after we've given it a little bit of time for the last voter's information to sync. We take the clip off of the back using the snap-ons there, and it's going to go into our case just like we would had unpacked it. Remember, the instructions are there, so we'll follow that. Let's then talk a little bit more about the hotspot. You're going to take your antennas off of the hotspot and then you power it down, but remember not to do that until you have given at least 5 minutes for that last voter information to sync back to our systems. Otherwise, follow the instructions for that, pack it up, put it back in the case, and that'll take care of all of that for you. Remember to follow those instructions. They're all available there for you and should be pretty straightforward for you to be able to get that packed up. Alright, so we've just run through the poll pad training here, and I know that moves pretty quickly for you. Feel free to come into our office if you want to practice on the equipment, or again, sign up for that optional in-person capstone course. That'll give you some time to touch the screens, work through some of the scenarios, and experience the poll pad, especially if you're a new judge. Otherwise, just know that there are step-by-step instructions provided on Election Day, packing up the equipment, unpacking the equipment. Those all have checklists to use, and if you've got experienced judges in the polling place, they'll be able to help you as well. But I do think, and our past experience has shown, is once election judges have worked with the poll pad a little bit, especially on Election Day, and knowing that most of the voters just need to be checked in, that you'll find the process to be quite easy, pretty easy for you to understand and learn on Election Day. I hope you enjoy using the poll pads, and again, thank you for watching this video.